Buddhism is a world religion founded by the Buddha in ancient India. Buddhists seek wisdom, meaning, inner peace, and freedom from greed, hatred, and ignorance. Mutually sustaining life, a Buddhist call to a troubled world.
Just as rain falls on all vegetation, so Buddhist compassion extends equally to all people. Just as different plants receive particular benefits from the same rain, so people of different natures and circumstances are blessed in different ways.
Hello. It's truly a pleasure and an honor to be able to share our message with you. From a Buddhist standpoint, it's a miracle to be born as a human, let alone be able to communicate, albeit through an electronic medium. To illustrate this point, there is a well-known Buddhist parable that goes as follows. There once lived a sea turtle in the vast ocean. A piece of wood with a round hole about a foot in diameter was thrown in the ocean. The turtle, living in the depths of the sea, only comes up to the surface every 1,000 years. And the chance of that turtle coming up to the surface and sticking his head through that hole is the same as that of us being born a human being. Well, speaking of miracles, we are fortunate to have as our guest a person whose work keeps him constantly on the go between North America and Asia. Dr. John McRae is a professor of Buddhist studies at Indiana University, where his primary area of specialization is Chinese Chan and Japanese Zen. But his recent interests have included a study of American Buddhism, particularly of Zen Buddhism. In any case, we thought we would take this opportunity to have him share his thoughts on Buddhism in America with a focus on Zen. Well, John, thanks for coming on the show. Appreciate you being here.
Well, I'm very happy to be here.
My first question has to do with the state of Buddhism in America. What's going on? How do you assess the situation as far as Buddhism?
I think Buddhism is growing pretty well in the United States. Perhaps not as rapidly as Islam, for example. I think that Islam benefits from much more organized efforts to propagate the religion, whereas Buddhism in the United States is growing up from the grassroots and from just, how do you say, energy internal to American culture.
Good. Well, so it's growing. And how is it when we compare this situation with when we were back in our college days? And I know we were on the same Stanford campus in the late 60s.
Right.
Right. I don't recall seeing too much Buddhist presence then. I don't.
Yeah. I think, but there was around that time, there was kind of a Zen boom, for example.
Maybe that was a beginning?
And maybe it was right about the beginning. I know that you and I graduated, I graduated in 63, or 64, I guess.
That early?
No,
I think it's a little later.
I think it's a little later.
Anyway, go ahead.
That's
a long time ago.
That's high school. Yeah, my memory's fading these days. I actually graduated in 69. I was giving you high school years there.
That makes sense. Okay.
But around that time, Zen started really taking off in the United States.
That's true.
Other forms of Buddhism, I mean, at that point, there was Buddhism and there was Zen, and people thought of them as being quite separate things, actually.
Right, yeah. Zen has been not even Buddha sometimes.
In a way,
yeah.
And there was one famous book that was, what was it, 3 Ways of Eastern Wisdom or something that was Hinduism, Buddhism, and Zen.
I see, yeah. So it's been said that those who convert to Buddhism in America become members of four schools, Zen, Tibetan, Theravada or Vipassana, and Soka Gakkai. So how is Zen Buddhism doing in relation to the other three?
Yeah, well, I think now Tibetan Buddhism is getting most of the media attention, and there are good reasons for that. The Dalai Lama is a very, very impressive figure, and the story of Tibet is compelling. But Zen Buddhism is expanding kind of at a grassroots level.
I see.
And there are practice centers in many, many cities and smaller towns. And so I think Zen is not the boom, it's not in the boom years that it once was, but it's growing, maturing very nicely.
I see. You know, recent shows have dealt with awakening. And I know you've done some studies on American Zen Buddhists. And so I'm wondering, how do Zen Buddhists conceptualize awakening or think about awakening?
Oh, interesting question. Because, I mean, Zen gives people something to do. I mean, there is a practice. But what I did was, I've gone to about a dozen American Soto Zen centers, and I talked to the students. I talked to the teachers also, but I interviewed the students. And within the Dogen tradition of Soto Zen, there's a real almost prohibition and self-prohibition against talking about awakening.
Oh, really? That's
so
ironic.
Yeah, it is ironic. It is ironic. But so they sit. These are people who are captivated by Zazen.
I see.
They can't always say why they do it, but it becomes central to their lives. But there's some questions they won't answer, and you know, what is the nature of awakening is one of those questions.
I see. So they're more interested in Zazen or sitting meditation than thinking about what is the ultimate goal of Buddhism.
For example, I mean, this is not exactly what you asked me, but I would ask them, how does Zen fit into the rest of your religious life? You know? And do you still believe in God, a Christian God in some way? Because many of these people are former Christians or Jews. Or what happens to you after you die? Which is, you know, a big issue for all of us, I think. And mostly they would say, well, gee, I don't know, ask me after I die. So they were kind of consciously putting off making decisions in a way that I think of as articulate reticence. I mean, these
articulate reticence.
They're very well-spoken, very well-educated, but there are certain issues they're just not going to take a stand on, and I think even awakening is one of those issues.
Well, how about, you hear a lot about the emphasis on living in the moment, in the present. Do you find that kind of this talk in your study?
Well, in this particular study with this group of respondents, I mean, we have to say, I was stunned that it almost never came up.
I see.
I was stunned because that the rhetoric of living in the now, or you know, applying Zen in one's daily life, it didn't come out that much.
But it's you find it a lot in Zen literature and in the culture, so to speak. So anyway, can I move on to asking you a question regarding comparing American Zen experience with, say, contemporary Japanese Zen Buddhists and how they think about awakening or practice. And
I think that what's unique in the American situation is that these are lay people who are creating communities together.
Yeah, that's important. Lay people and communal and working together. Yeah, that's interesting.
Exactly. I mean, I know people who do Zen practice in Japan. I know both, you know, priests and lay people here, but it seems you go to a temple and go to a zazenkai and do your practice.
They're usually priests and have been are part of a long tradition with a temple and all that. If I can move little bit further to China and maybe back a few centuries. I know you're one of the foremost scholars on Chinese Chan and Buddhism. Would you compare? How would you see American Zen within that context?
Well, there is a common point, at least. I think there are probably a lot of differences, but the common point is that some aspects of Zen were designed in China for people who think too much. People who
think too much.
People who think too much, who study too much, who are kind of overeducated, and so it's like, can I let go of all that nonsense?
I see.
And in a way, that was very attractive to a lot of American Zen Buddhists. So the kind of the putting down those cares and worries and so forth is a strong element in Zen.
Okay. Do you think Americans are messing things up? I mean, how they taking Buddhism and...
Well, no doubt, yes, in many, many ways, no doubt. But there's one similarity that always strikes me, that we think of American culture as a instant kind of McDonald's, use it and throw it away. But in 8th century China, where Zen really took off, I mean, there was a Zen boom in the Chinese capital, in the largest city in the world at the time, population of 1 million, and the whole emphasis was on do it now. Buddhism is not something for way off many lifetimes in the future. This is a rare opportunity to be a human. Grab that opportunity and get enlightened now.
And that's similar to American culture.
I think there's a similarity in that, Buddhism, Zen practice is not something you should do in the future or for the future. Do it in the now. Do it for the now.
Well, looks like we're out of time, and appreciate you taking the time to visit with us and sharing your thoughts with us. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you very much. I appreciate being able to be here.
Good. As we sign off, we've learned that the American experience about awakening differs to some extent from the other parts of the world, as we saw in today's opening passage. Just as rain falls on all vegetation, so Buddha's compassion extends equally to all people. Just as different plants receive particular benefits from the same rain, so people of different natures and circumstances are blessed in different ways. In our next show, we will discuss the idea of thinking big and not thinking small as we conclude the topic of the 4 marks of existence.
We at Bukkyo Dendo Kyokai pursue peace and happiness for people around the world. We have published the Buddhist teachings into 41 languages and donated our publication to hotels and other facilities in 55 countries. We would like to share the Buddhist teachings with people around the world. That's our mission. Visit our website for more information.